And the next talk is by Peng Zhang, called Approach to Thermal Equilibrium in Atomic Collisions.
So, thanks, Jane. It's my pleasure to have this great opportunity to present some of my work with Alex on this wonderful symposium. So the research I'm going to talk about is our recent study on the theory of translational energy relaxation of initially non-equilibrium gas. And here is the title of the talk, Approach to Thermal Equilibrium in Atomic Collisions. So the motivation of this work is to study the atom escaping mechanism from the planetary atmosphere. And this is one of the key issues in the study of the evolution of the planet. So the atom escape was caused by the translational energy transfer from the high energetic particles when they penetrate into the planetary atmosphere. And these high energetic particles could be produced from photochemical reactions, a recombination process, or even solar wind. And actually, the physical significance of studying this translational energy relaxation is not limited to the application in the atmospheric physics or astrophysics. This is the general problem of relaxation of non-equilibrium system. It has many impact in many aspects of physics and chemistry. So over the years, there have been a lot of effort has been put onto this subject. And from these studies, we know there exist these two types of systems. For the first one, if initially the system was prepared in a canonical distribution or Maxwellian-Boltzmann distribution, the relaxation of system goes through a continuous sequence of canonical distribution, which can be characterized by an effective temperature. And we call this type of property as canonical invariance. And the system behave like this way, include the relaxation of harmonic oscillators and the hot-sphere Rayleigh gas, which I define in the next slide. Unfortunately, for a large class of physical systems, this is not the case. Even if the system was prepared in an initially canonical distribution, it will be destroyed during the entire course of relaxation. And it can only be recovered when they reach thermal equilibrium. And the system behave like this way include the relaxation of a subsystem of anharmonic oscillators, a subsystem of rigid rotators, and relaxation of spin in contact with a lattice. Here there's an exception case, which is a spin 1/2 system. And this is the general picture for the relaxation of non-equilibrium system. More specifically to the system we are interested in, which is the translational relaxation of initially non-equilibrium gas. There are some general rules can be drawn from previous study. We know this relaxation process can be described by the classical Boltzmann kinetic equation, but the complicated mathematical structure of this Boltzmann equation prevent us from giving a general recipe for the determination of the energy distribution function. So approximations were introduced. The first one is the hot-sphere approximation. And the second one is try to transform this integral equation to a partial differential equation of second order, the Fock-Planck equation, because in this case, it is more readily subject to an analytical solution. And it turns out this can be done in this mass ratio limit, which is defined between the mass of projectile and the Bass gas species. The two limits include Rayleigh gas and the Lorentz gas. Rayleigh gas is heavy particles moving in the light bath. So for Rayleigh gas, analytical solution for Fock-Planck equation exists, and the results shows the relaxation have this canonical invariance property. For Lorentz gas, there's no analytical solution. Some numerical result indicate that there is no canonical invariance property in the relaxation of hot-sphere Rayleigh gas. And besides this, people also look at the influence of the interaction potential on the relaxation of Rayleigh gas using some classical collision model, and they found also the numerical result found still there is no this canonical invariance property in the relaxation, except this one magical case when the interaction potential between the projectile and the bus gas scale as a power of -5. We call this type of system as Maxwellian molecule. And actually, the persuasion of this canonical invariance property is a very nice feature in the description of the translational energy relaxation. Because in this case, the kinetic can be simply represented by an exponential decaying function, the so-called Newton-Coulomb law. So what is the mathematical condition for the system to have this canonical invariance property? There are also some studies on this subject. And this is the Boltzmann kinetic equation I was talking about. And this function A is nothing but a transition probability function for the energy transfer process from initial energy E prime to final energy E. And this study shows that this transition probability function must be sum of delta functions and their derivatives. And in addition, this higher order transition moment, which this is the definition of this transition moment, the higher order transition moment must be 0. In this case, this linear Boltzmann equation is exactly equivalent to this Fock-Planck equation. These are the two necessary sufficient conditions for the system to have this canonical invariance property. One thing we should keep in mind is that these results are largely based on the Hart-Sphere approximation. We know Hart-Sphere approximation has limitations. It has no angular and energy dependence. Especially for the neutral atomic collisions, it cannot reproduce the strong forward scattering it cannot reproduce the strong forward scattering. So we don't know whether those conclusions based on Hart-Sphere approximation are still valid for the actual atomic and molecular collisions. So over the years, and Alex and his colleagues spent quite a lot of time on this subject. And they, derived this kernel of the Boltzmann equation using analytically using this energy and angular dependent double differential cross sections that can be calculated quantum mechanically or semi-classically, and it applied this into some of the important issues in the atmospheric problem, and they found very different result from Hart-Sphere approximation. And here I only listed a few of those works. Of course, you can find more. Although we have these successful applications, there's still no precise test of the theory of translational energy relaxation. So this is the problem we decided to look into. And luckily, we have there's some recent experiment work on this. So we decided to check this theory of translational energy relaxation in conjunction with the recent experiment. And this is the system we're going to look into, which is the energetic nitrogen atoms thermalized in helium and argon baths, and they represent the Rayleigh and the Lorentz gas, respectively. And in the experiment was done at room temperature. The initial nitrogen atom was produced by the photodissociation of nitric dioxide with an initial energy about 1 electron volt. Then it was injected into this helium or argon bath, and then the Doppler profile of this nitrogen atom will be recorded using the laser-induced fluorescence technique. With these Doppler profiles, the kinetic of this relaxation process can be inferred. So theoretically, we first derived these diatomic constants I listed here. As you can see, they're just a typical, one-word system. So before I start to present our result, I would like to say a few words on our theoretical approach. We solved the linear Boltzmann equation directly on a discretized grid using this matrix exponential propagation. And once we have this distributive function, we can get the Doppler profile through this transformation. And also we can get the average time-dependent average translational energy either directly from distributive function or from Doppler profile. There is one thing I need to point out here is the shape of this Doppler profile. If the shape of the distribution function is a Maxwellian-like shape, this Doppler profile will assume a Gaussian shape. And in this case, this integral can be integrated analytically, and the result is a simple expression related to the full width at half maximum of this Gaussian spectral line. Now let's see what we got from our study. First, let's look at this kernel of the Boltzmann equation with construct using the elastic cross-section we calculated. And this is a three-dimensional plot. The x and y axis are initial and final energy, and the z axis is this transition probabilities. Since this relaxation goes through elastic collision process, it involves only small energy collision. So all the largest transition probability will center along this diagonal line between initial and the final energy. This is also the kernel, but it's a two-dimensional card along one of the initial energies, about 0.93 electron volts. And in this figure, the solid line is the result from the ab initio calculation, and the dashed line from the hard sphere approximation. And the radius of this hard sphere approximation is chosen, try to reproduce the kinetic result from the ab initio calculation. And as you can see, in this largest transition probability region, there are more than 2 orders of magnitude difference between ab initio result and hard sphere approximation. And the lack of this sharp peak in the hard sphere kernel reflect the absence of the forward scattering in the hard sphere approximation. So for collisions that are dominant by this small angle scattering, and considerable error may occur if one use the hard sphere approximation to describe their relaxation kinetics. With this kernel, we solved the linear Boltzmann equation. And since we got a similar result for both of the relaxation in helium and argon gas, so I will use the result in helium gas as the example to illustrate our result. And this is a time-dependent energy distribution function at a selected relaxation time. And these functions are represented by these different lines with different color and symbols. Initially, this black line, the system will center around this 1 electron volt region, which are from this photodissociation of nitric dioxide. Then the collision will slow down the nitrogen atom, and it will bring this bimodal structure in the distribution function around 100 nanosecond. The appearance this bimodal structure is because the small energy transfer in a typical elastic collision, and also the initial relaxation of the initial peak is low. And this bimodal structure can be manifested in the Doppler profile by their departure from the Gaussian shape. And as time progresses, the nitrogen will be further cooled down to the bus gas temperature, and this bimodal structure disappeared, and the distribution functions start to assume a Maxwellian-like shape. And once now with the distribution function in hand, we can we are ready to compare with the experiment. In this slide, I'm showing the Doppler profiles calculated experimentally and measured from the experiment. This horizontal axis represents the frequency shift from the central resonance transition of nitrogen atom, and the vertical axis is the relative intensity of emission at this shifted frequency. And those profiles are normalized to unity. In this figure, there are two sets of experimental data. They are represented by this blue and teal curves, and they are almost overlapped except in this middle region, which are the small energy component of the nitrogen gas. There are also two sets of experimental curves. Those are the two smooth black and blue curves. This black and blue curve differs only in this extended wing region. For the black curve, it's a result from a calculation that from an initial distribution function of nitrogen atom about 1 electron volt energy. And the blue curve is the result represent the calculation of the initial nitrogen mixtured by 20% 2 electron volt nitrogen and 80% of 1 electron volt nitrogen. And the better agreement between blue curve and with experiment indicate there's some extra energy source in the experiment. But besides this, from the overall picture, the theory and the experiment agrees closely, and this close agreement demonstrates we had a successful solution of this time-dependent Boltzmann equation. But more importantly, from these Doppler profiles, we found there exist two time scales in this relaxation problem. Before the first time domain is before 200 nanoseconds, the shape of the Doppler profile is non-Gaussian. But after this 200 nanoseconds, all the Doppler profiles assume a Gaussian shape, and we proved this point by fitting this Doppler profiles with a Gaussian function. We see obvious difference before 200 nanoseconds, but afterwards they are identical. And this tells us the relaxation actually goes through two steps. Initially, the initially non-Maxwellian distribution will first relax to a Maxwellian-like shape. Then in the second stage of the relaxation, the shape of Maxwellian function, Maxwellian distribution will be conserved and all the way to the thermal equilibrium. So having established we have the correct solution of Boltzmann equation, we start to look at this two-time scale characterize the simulation at different initial energies, which are listed in the first column for both helium and argon. And then we define two time scales. The first one is the total relaxation time. That means the total time for the system to reach thermal equilibrium. As you can see, the higher of the initial energy, the longer relaxation time. This is expected. Then we define another time scale, tau g, listed in this third column. The tau g is defined as the distribution function of the system for the first time to assume a Maxwellian-like shape during the relaxation. And at this specific moment, the kinetic energy of the system is defined by this effective temperature given in this fourth column. From these two studies, we see that this for the translational relaxation of initially non-Maxwellian distributed function, the system will always first to quickly approach to Maxwellian-like shape in a time scale less than 10% of their total relaxation time. And the kinetic energy at the moment left in the system is still more than 30% from the initial energy. And this kinetic energy is much larger than the thermokinetic energy. In this case, is 0.04 electron volt. In the second stage of relaxation, which is a long time period, so the shape of the distributive function will be preserved, and this can be simply characterized by a time-dependent effective temperature defined similar to this way. So clearly, these results are quite different from those general rules I gave. Some of those general rules I gave at the beginning of talk that based on the Hart sphere result. And this formation and the preservation of the Maxwellian shape in distributive function, it occurs for both, it is independent of mass ratio. It occurs both for light and heavy baskets. And this feature simply reflects the small energy transfer and the small angle scattering is dominant in a neutral particle collision. And so this is what we found from this study. And by this, I will conclude my talk. The translation and its relaxation can be calculated by two time scale. One is short, one is long, and this formation and the perturbation of Maxwellian distribution is independent of the mass ratio between projectile and the baskets, and it reflects the dominance of small angle scattering and the small energy transfer. And finally, I would like to thank Alex for his guidance in this work and the very insightful suggestions, not only in this work, but also in many of other research. I also would like to thank Professor Kachinko. We had wonderful discussions and valuable suggestions from him, and also Professor Matsumi for providing the experimental data and the funding agencies. And finally, thank you all for your attention.